I'd gotten a call from Pastor Ruth asking me if I would be willing to do a discussion today about how I minister in the workplace. And I thought, oh my, I don't know if I minister in the workplace. So I said to her, well, you'll have to give me a couple days, I'll call you back. So I had to think about it. I asked myself, how do I minister in the workplace? Do I at all? And as I thought about ministering and my experience on the walk to Emmaus, I realized that the light that surrounds me is the light of comfort and caring. I realized that God has put me here as a steward to spread his word. You see, I take care of people. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been a registered nurse for a long time. And through me, I now understand how God delivers comfort to my patients and their families. I've had thousands of wonderful encounters with people at their worst times, and times that I really will never forget. There was the man in room 526. He was admitted the evening before. His diagnosis? AIDS. He was a young man in his 30s. I had gotten a report. I was standing there reading his chart so I could have more information before I went in to see him. And Brenda, the best aide you would ever want to have take care of you, came to me and said, Jan, the man in 526 put on his call light. I went to answer it, and he just chewed me out. And Brenda is just the sweetest person. So I immediately put down his chart. I went into his room, sat down into his bed. I took his hand in mine. I looked him straight in the eyes, and I said, you are not going to die this hospital admission. Tears came to his eyes. He was scared. He was scared. God wanted him to have instant comfort, and he did that through me. Because I walked out of the room and I stood against the wall and I thought, where did that come from? Then there was Eric and Marcia. Eric was a firefighter, but theirs was a love story. High school sweethearts. Both of them went off to a different college. Both of them then married someone else. Then came divorce. But somewhere down the road, they found each other again. They were married for 1.5 years. Eric was admitted to the hospital, and he was very, very ill. Again, another patient with AIDS. Firefighters have a terrific camaraderie amongst them. When one of their fellow comrades is down, they stand by. There was a constant flow of colleagues in Eric's room, and Marcia was always at his side. But I realized that every time I would go into the room, they were all on the sides of the room. No one was ever really close to Eric. And Marcia had made it very clear that no one was to know Eric's diagnosis. So I was going to do my morning assessment. I walked in, there's his entourage. I walked up to him, gave him a big hug, a kiss on the cheek. He gave me a great little smile and a wink. He knew what I was doing. His colleagues needed to know that it was okay to touch him. It was okay to give him a hug, because we all need that. Then there was the man who was vacationing in the state with his wife and daughter. He became very ill very quickly. And God took him home within 5 days. The family and I had developed a very close relationship very quickly. 1 year later, the phone rang on the nursing unit. And this voice said to me on the other end of the phone, she said, I know you don't remember me, but I'm so-and-so's daughter. And I said, well, of course I do. How are you? How's your mother? And she said to me, I promised myself I would not let today go by without trying to find you and thank you for all you did for us. What a gift. But it wasn't what I did. It wasn't me. I simply was the steward that God sent to help prepare him to go home. Then there was an endoscopy patient. My patient was the husband. He was on the stretcher. I was preparing him for his procedure. The wife was sitting in the chair next to him, complaining terribly, being very negative about colonoscopy, what a horrible exam, the horrible prep. Well, those of us who have been through it, we know it is. But colonoscopy saves lives. So when I was done preparing my patient for the procedure, I looked at his wife and I said, you know, as a woman, as a nurse, if you were my mother, my sister, my aunt, my niece, my neighbor, my best friend, I would say to you, please have a colonoscopy. Well, she continued to complain. Husband went through the procedure. He did great. He had a couple polyps, nothing special. Home they went. 4 weeks later, I'm looking at the schedule when we get to work, and guess whose name showed up on the schedule? It was hers. Sure enough, she comes in the door. She said, Jan better be here. I said, I am. She said, I'm here because of you. And she was angry. And I looked at her and I smiled and gave her a big hug and I said, I'm really glad you're here. You're doing the right thing. And you know what? She was. Because she had 4 polyps. And one of those polyps was precancerous. She saved her own life that day. It wasn't me. But I was happy to take the blame. And most recently, I had a patient who, a lovely gal who had been at her church on Sunday morning for the service, was brought into us on the ambulance with stroke-like symptoms. Lovely woman, could barely say a word, very weak. Her daughter came in shortly thereafter. And I was in the room putting input into the computer for my assessment. And the daughter was sitting by the mom's side, and she started saying the Lord's Prayer. Well, guess who loves the Lord's Prayer? So I stopped what I was doing. I took my patient's hand, I took her daughter's hand, and started to join in, and the daughter stopped for a second, looked at me. I gave her a little wink, a little smile, and on we went with the Lord's Prayer. And then there was another very recent patient, an elderly man who came in with kidney stones. Great man. The one thing that he loved was telling jokes, even though he had issues with his memory. So he was treated with us for about 3 hours or so. And the one thing he really wanted to do, he wanted to tell me the joke about the man who had no arms and no legs and showed up at the whorehouse door. I'm not going to go there. But at any rate, we cared for him, and he had a very pleasant experience. The wife and daughter were lovely. And it came to the end of my shift, and I like to tell my people when I'm leaving, let them know what's happening. We all do better with good communication. And I looked at the wife, and she was getting tears in her eyes as I was telling her that someone else was going to come on. I was going to tell what has been going on, make sure the jokes were passed on. And she said, oh, thank you so much. You made us all feel so comfortable. And I just smiled, and I thanked her. And she said, oh, can I have a hug? I said, only if I can have one back. And then the daughter jumped up and said, oh, I want one too. But you know what? It wasn't about me. It was about the fact that God decided I would be most useful in that role to help share his message. And I want you to know it's been a win-win situation. And for that, I can only say, thanks be to God.
Good morning. Good morning. And I would just like to thank all the Jan and all the nurses of the world. We've all been there when they are just our angels. And thank you. Thank God. So I hope this makes sense today. Ruth called me sort of at the last minute and said that she thought we were short a person, and would I whip something up? So I hope it makes sense. But before I get started, I really want to dedicate my talk today to my teacher, Wayne Dyer, who passed last week. And Wayne's work has helped me to be fearless and authentic in mind. And Wayne's work helped me to become closer to God. And he helped me to really get that all things are possible through the power of Christ. So he will live on, and it's our turn to spread the word now. So there is a verse in Scripture that best reflects my work in the world. It's from Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Isn't that what we all want? To feel the comfort of hope for the future. My work in leadership development and succession planning helps leaders to believe in and plan for a successful future. It helps them to create a future vision and a clear path to get there. As we all know, the workplace can be filled with obstacles, pain, and confusion, as well as joy. I work with leaders on some of the most critical aspects of making business successful: team building, communication, conflict resolution, succession planning, and in building leadership skills. It is so amazing to watch people change and grow within the structure of our leadership development program. We all have a basic desire to use our God-given strengths, to continuously evolve, and to be recognized for our unique abilities and contributions. As George Bernard Shaw wrote, "This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one." So I help leaders to advance their unique strengths and to get recognized and promoted. I help the company to succeed by identifying and growing our high potential talent, engaging and retaining our most valued people. I work for a wonderful company in the construction industry. At first I thought, me in the construction industry? How could I possibly be a fit there? I have to admit that I felt anxious and apprehensive about bringing my leadership tools to a construction company. How could these leadership, team building, and dialogue tools be useful with a bunch of construction guys? I soon found out. I met a successful, passionate CEO who runs a family-like culture, who deeply cares about excellence, safety, and growing leaders. Bill himself is the best business leader I have ever worked for. I also met a group of young men. I work with mostly men who share the CEO's vision and work harder than any other group I have ever worked with. They are always striving to be the best versions of themselves as leaders, and they quickly embrace the leadership and dialogue tools. In dialogue, there are 5 elements to healthy communication: being present, non-judgmental, non-directive, which means no interrupting, fixing, controlling, and fighting to be right, being curious, and asking insightful questions from a place of curiosity and peace. The dialogue technique has become part of how we do business and has influenced a change in our culture. The team reports that dialogue helps them to communicate about the issues and to find innovative solutions together. Relationships have become more collaborative with coworkers and customers. We are experiencing less drama, more ease, fearless conversations, and productivity. Recently, at a company event, one of the wives came running up to me asking, "Are you Fran?" She said, "I couldn't wait to meet the woman who taught my husband about dialogue." She said, "He is so present in our conversations at home now, and our marriage has improved. I wanted to thank you for teaching Mike how to be a better listener." At almost all of the company events, I have one of the wives excitedly asking, "Are you Fran?" followed by a story of how their man had changed for the better. Nothing makes me happier than to know the leadership tools I teach not only help these young men to become more successful at work, but also helps them to be better husbands and fathers. In the end, it all comes down to love. Dialogue is about listening with love, and leadership is about caring for and loving the organization and the people in it. My purpose is to build bridges and relationships. I view conflict, confusion, and emotional pain as an opportunity for productive change and growth. It is my honor to teach the tools that develop self-confidence, leadership, and bridges of communication, relationships, and peace in the workplace. People are like plants. All it takes is a little water to help them grow. If you are a leader, what can you do to help others to grow? Are you creating a positive environment at home and at work? Are you taking the time to define the mission? Are you helping others to understand their own strengths and allowing them to shine and advance the company? Can you offer more gratitude and words of recognition? Are you using the 5 elements of dialogue to connect with people? Do you encourage and bring out the best in people? Do you set aside your own selfish agenda and work for the greater good of all? In the words of Max Dupree, the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. This world is desperately in need of strong servant leadership. What can each of us do to continue to serve and influence positive change and growth in this amazing world? Happy Labor Day.